Karen Whitmore pressed her face against her kitchen window, binoculars in hand, watching her neighbor Jim install what appeared to be a fence post exactly 3 inches over the property line. Her coffee mug trembled with righteous indignation as she speed-dialed the HOA hotline, only to accidentally call Pizza Palace instead and spend 2 minutes demanding they send a compliance officer before realizing her mistake. "This is Karen Whitmore, 1247 Maple Lane," she announced breathlessly into her phone once she'd reached the actual HOA. "I'm reporting a severe violation of Section 4.2b regarding unauthorized fencing structures." She paused dramatically, then added, "And I have photographic evidence." The photos she'd taken were so zoomed in they looked like abstract art, but Karen was convinced they clearly showed Jim's heinous crime against suburban order. Within an hour, she'd fired off 17 emails to the HOA board, each one more detailed than the last, complete with hand-drawn diagrams and measurements she'd taken with a ruler pressed against her window. "Margaret, you simply must see this," Karen declared, cornering her neighbor at the mailbox. "Jim's fence is going to destroy our property values. Do you know what happens to neighborhoods when people start putting up whatever fences they want? Chaos, Margaret. Pure chaos." Margaret backed away slowly. "Karen, it's just a fence. Just a fence." Karen's voice reached a pitch that made local dogs whimper. "Section 4.2b clearly states that all fencing must be approved by the Architectural Review Committee. I've memorized the entire HOA handbook, Margaret. Memorized it." By Thursday, Karen had organized what she called an emergency neighborhood watch meeting in her living room. Only 3 people showed up: elderly Mrs. Chen, who'd misunderstood and brought cookies for book club, teenager Danny, who was there for the free Wi-Fi, and Margaret, who'd come out of morbid curiosity. "The fence situation has escalated," Karen announced, pointing to a PowerPoint presentation she prepared. "I've documented 14 separate violations, including improper post spacing and unauthorized wood staining." Mrs. Chen raised her hand. "Dear, isn't it possible Jim just wanted some privacy?" Karen's eye twitched. "Privacy is what curtains are for, Mrs. Chen. Fences are for property destruction and neighborhood destabilization." The HOA finally responded to Karen's flood of complaints with a form letter stating they'd investigate the matter. This sent Karen into overdrive. She began patrolling the street at dawn and dusk, measuring fence posts with a tape measure and taking notes in a special notebook labeled Violation Log. Jim watched from his kitchen window as Karen army crawled across his lawn with the tape measure. He opened his door and called out, "Karen, what are you doing?" She parked up like a prairie dog, grass stains on her white cardigan. "Gathering evidence for my case file. This fence is going to court, Jim. I hope you have a good lawyer." "It's 6 inches inside my property line, Karen. I had it surveyed." "Surveys can be wrong," she shrieked, waving her measuring tape like a weapon. "I know what I measured." What Karen didn't know was that Jim had grown up in a family of contractors and had indeed measured everything twice. What she also didn't know was that her own beloved rose garden, which she'd expanded 3 times over the past year, was actually extending 4 feet into the community green space. And what she definitely didn't know was that her next-door neighbor Mike, tired of Karen's dawn patrol activities, had started documenting her own violations with the same obsessive detail she used against Jim. The stage was set for Karen's perfectly ordered world to come crashing down in ways she never could have imagined. Karen's morning routine of measuring Jim's fence was interrupted by a certified letter that made her hands shake so violently. She dropped her coffee mug, sending ceramic shards and French roast across her pristine white kitchen tiles. Notice of multi-PA HOA violations. The letter began, listing 17 different infractions Karen had allegedly committed over the past 18 months. Her rose garden was 4 feet into community property. Her decorative garden gnomes exceeded the 2-item maximum for lawn ornaments. Her mailbox was painted the wrong shade of approved beige. "This is impossible," Karen whispered, sinking into her kitchen chair. She'd studied the HOA handbook so thoroughly she could recite Section 7.3 about mailbox specifications in her sleep. How could she have violations? Her phone rang. "Karen, it's Mike from next door. We need to talk." Mike appeared at her front door holding a thick folder and wearing the kind of smile that made Karen's stomach drop. "I've been documenting some concerns about your property compliance," he said, settling into her living room without invitation. "My property is PLF state," Karen sputtered. "I follow every rule, every regulation, including the rule about gardens staying within property boundaries." Mike opened his folder, revealing photos of Karen's rose garden that looked suspiciously like the ones she'd taken of Jim's fence, or the regulation about excessive lawn decorations. "Let's see. I count 12 gnomes, 3 flamingos, and a ceramic rabbit." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Those are decorative elements that enhance property values. According to Section 6.7c, they're violations. Just like your mailbox. Mike pulled out a color chart. "You painted it warm beige, but the approved color is classic beige. There's a difference." The room spun. Karen gripped her chair arms, her perfectly manicured nails leaving dents in the fabric. "You can't do this to me. I'm the one who enforces the rules." "Actually, Karen, anyone can file complaints. You taught me that." Mike's smile widened. "I learned from watching you." Within days, Karen's world imploded. The HOA board, apparently tired of her constant complaints, scheduled a hearing for all her violations. Her neighbors, emboldened by Mike's example, began documenting everything. Her trash cans staying out 15 minutes past pickup time. Her car parked 17 inches from the curb instead of the required 12. Even her doormat being positioned at a slight angle. "This is a conspiracy," Karen declared at the emergency HOA meeting, her voice cracking. But the board members just stared at her with the same tired expression she'd seen on Jim's face countless times. "Mrs. Whitmore," the board president said slowly, "you have 30 days to correct all violations or face fines totaling $8,400. Karen stumbled home to find orange violation notices taped to her door, her mailbox, and even her garden gnomes. Her perfect neighborhood surveillance system had turned against her. Every morning walk became a gauntlet of neighbors who now watched her with the same intensity she'd once reserved for others. The final blow came when she discovered Jim's fence was not only legal, but had actually increased property values by 12%, according to a recent appraisal. Meanwhile, her own violations were so extensive that she'd need to tear up her beloved rose garden, repaint her mailbox, and remove 10 of her precious lawn ornaments. Sitting in her kitchen, surrounded by violation notices and repair estimates, Karen realized she'd become exactly what she'd always fought against: the problem neighbor. The worst part wasn't the fines or the work required. It was the creeping suspicion that everyone was now watching her, waiting for her next mistake. Outside her window, she could see Mike in his yard, holding what looked suspiciously like a measuring tape. And was that Mrs. Chen taking pictures of her supposedly non-compliant window boxes? Karen closed her blinds and wondered if this was how Jim had felt all those months ago. But one question gnawed at her as she stared at the stack of violations. Who had taught Mike to be so thorough in his documentation? Because his methods looked remarkably similar to her own. Almost as if someone had been watching her watch everyone else.